If I homeschool my child, will they still have options later in life, such as getting a job that they want, going to university or college, doing a training program, and so on? I hear this from lots of parents. I work with parents of sensitive spirited kids. Sometimes they struggle in the school system, and it can be hard to make a decision about whether we'll be doing right by our kids if we take them out of school and homeschool them. We want them to have options later. We love them. We want to do right by them. We really want to provide them with the best opportunities for their future. So how can you make this decision, and what's most important? I'm going to share some information that I think you'll find helpful. To just summarize to start, what I think your child needs most to have options in future is to be present and to be engaged. They need to have some skills too, but I'm going to explain why those first things are really so important from my observations and my experiences. And my observations and experiences come from homeschooling my own son for a few years, knowing lots of homeschool families whose kids have gone on to college or university or a training of their choice, or have gotten work in an area that they absolutely love. And I'm also drawing from my experience of having worked in several jobs in a position where I was privy to confidential information about why people get hired and fired. Okay. So, first of all, let's talk about jobs. If you're an employer, when you hire someone new, they may or may not need to know all of the skills they're going to need for that job, right? Some of those can often be taught. So I used to be a nurse. So say, for instance, you get hired in a nursing job. Obviously, you need to have your basic credentials as a registered nurse or a practical nurse. But say you haven't worked in surgery for 10 years, but you've worked in, I don't know, cardiology or palliative care or something. Some of those skills can be taught. And what's most important is that you have the initiative to learn. You aren't afraid to ask questions. And sometimes people are afraid to ask questions if they have a fairly low self-worth because they're afraid of being seen as stupid. And they can learn the skills they need as long as they will take the initiative and they have enough confidence in themselves and enough a sense of self-worth to ask the questions that they need to ask when they don't know something, right? So, and if they're fairly present in their bodies and engaged in what they're doing, and some people call that grounded. Typically you can tell somebody's engaged when they're able to kind of stay focused and engaged in what they're doing, and they're able to pay attention to what needs to be noticed when they're doing something, okay? So people who can do those things reasonably well, and there's no perfection, right? So people who can do those things reasonably well and are relatively grounded most of the time, they have a far better chance at having the job and the career that they want and being able to get the jobs that they want and keep them. People who can't do those things, in my experience, even if they have a credential or they're fully trained or they've graduated from high school, they're more likely to either lose their jobs or end up making mistakes that cost them something. Okay. And that's a bit of a generalization. And of course, it's not totally black and white. There's kind of a continuum there. But I think my main point here is that the more kids can be supported to have a reasonably accurate sense of who they are, and there's at least moderately confident in themselves as humans and in their skills, and they're willing to ask questions and they're able to stay grounded most of the time, they just have a much better chance in all of those areas. So the second thing that I want to talk about is options for college or university or any kind of post-secondary training for kids who have been homeschooled. So there might be an occasional subject where they need to do a first year level course, or they might need to do a little bit of upgrading at the college to get their foundational knowledge up to where it needs to be to get into a program that they want. And I say might because, you know, there's such a big range of homeschooling and unschooling, and some kids go ahead and, you know, take a few courses, you know, by distance or whatever online while they're doing their unschooling. So this is really individual. But I think my most important point to make here is that when your kids have been in an environment where they've had some positive associations with learning and where they've been able to be fully engaged and present because they've felt emotionally safe and because they're interested at least some or most of the time in the topics at hand that they're learning about, that transfers really well to going on and doing further learning. They tend to have a pretty easy time, even if they have to do some upgrading with courses, they tend to have a pretty easy time getting on with just doing those and getting ready to get into the program that they're really excited about getting into, right? So the key is, again, their ability to be present, engaged, take initiative, that their curiosity and their thirst for learning hasn't been stunted or shut down because they've been forced to stay in a system for years that they didn't like, and they've just built up a lot of resistance, okay? So yeah, so I've seen lots of kids who have homeschooled go on to, you know, university and post-secondary training of all types and thrive and flourish and do really well. So, and I just want to add one little thing here, you know, helping your kids follow their passions as homeschoolers or unschoolers doesn't mean that you don't take opportunities, especially as they get older, to begin to teach them about self-discipline, and that they sometimes have to do, you know, mundane or tedious things that are part of life, you know, and that might be something as simple as doing the dishes or, you know, doing laundry or cleaning the toilet comes to mind for me. Or it might mean learning about the self-discipline that it takes to, you know, edit a little story that they've written and just kind of polish it, put the finishing touches on it as they get older. Yeah, so I think that's all I have to say about that piece. A couple more things to mention. One of the great things about supporting your kids through a home learning environment is that they tend to stay very connected in many cases to their own creativity as well. So what I love about that is that's their uniqueness. That's the unique spin that they put on the things that they read or that they write or anything that they create. And I think there's a little bit more opportunity for them to stay connected to that for some kids. Again, some kids do well with that in a regular school system, either public or private, and their creativity thrives. So it's certainly not cut and dried. And the last thing that I want to mention is that, especially in our current world where information is so easy to access, it's really not, the education system really isn't about how much information your child gains. It's more about their presence, their connection to the self, their self, and the things that I've already been talking about. So I realize that homeschooling isn't an option for everyone. If your child is struggling with with any of the things that I've talked about in this video, and they need to stay in school for whatever reason, you can do as much as you can to advocate for them to have emotional safety and for them to get the support they need to be present and engaged, whatever that takes. You'll know your child best. If your child is thriving in the regular school system, be it public or private, hooray for them, right? I really, I'm not here to say that the public school system is bad. I certainly see a lot more kids that it doesn't work for, but some kids still really thrive in it. And last but not least, if you have the option to homeschool and you feel like your child is disconnected or disengaged at school, or they're, emotionally distressed, they literally hate school and they resist it all or most of the time, and there's just lots of fight around going to school. I really hope this eases your concerns about your child's future options if you should decide to homeschool or unschool. Thanks for listening. Love to hear your comments or questions below.